Okay, welcome to this week's lesson. So I'm going to try to move through this and get through pretty quickly. All right, so far in the class, what you should be able to do is you should be able to have you've seen your web.php file and you have routes and you've been able to see how to make templates. But what we're going to start to do is work on controllers and passing data around and generally getting a few tools in our toolbox to manage the development of our application. So the first tool that we're going to do is we're going to work on what's called named routes. And so I've already set up some files here that should be similar to what you have. I have a an about page, a contact page, a home page, login, register, and things like that. And so I have a set of pages here and I have routes, and here I don't have any of those routes added. So whenever I go to the application, I can go to my home page, but every time I go to about it or a contact or anything, the pages aren't found. So let's fix that. So I'm gonna go, and our first thing is let's just get the regular routing to work. So we have a few pages here. We have about, contact, home, login, about, contact, home, login, register. So let's go and, well, for time's sake, we'll just get 2 pages to work. We'll get the rest of them to work. So I'm actually gonna do an about. We'll do 3 pages. We'll do about, and then we'll do contact. So, and actually, to save some time, so anyway, I'm going to do about, contact. So now I should be able to go back to my application and click on about, and about registers with pages. So actually here we'll fix this. So we'll say about and contact. And what I'm going to do, oops, here is just see if we can get it about, and we're not going to do the contact page yet because we'll have to fix that. So we'll just right now we got the about and we got the home page. So we're not going to do contact yet. So now what I want to do, actually let's see, I'll get contact here and what's it say? Contact store not defined. View Laravel resources. Contact.blade. Well, we'll get this because the contact is here, and I already loaded my contact form in here. So let me get this out of here. And let's see if we can. You shouldn't have that error. I just have that error because I was already doing this. I recorded the video once and didn't have audio. So we got our 3 pages here. We got a home, about, contact. We're not going to worry about register and login because actually these are going to be done in a special way that Laravel is going to generate your register and login code so that you have a registration page and a login page with one command. But we're going to do that next week. So home and about, and now we got our pages working. This should be what you know so far. But what we want to do now is I'm going to want to use named routes. So the first step is that what a named route is just instead of referring to the internal links of your application through a URL like we're doing with in the href tag for the link, which is like in our main nav here, we have our hrefs here like this. what we're going to want to do is replace this with named routes. So let's look at this. It's just curly brace, route, parentheses, and then the name of the route. So I'm going to say that this is the home, and this is going to be, actually this is going to be home. Oops. And I'm actually going to, we don't need to do register and login because they're not going to work. So let's just get those out of here. And then we're going to do contact. So we'll put our about and contact. All right, so now what's going to happen, we're going to come over to our web.php, and we just have to add a name. So at the end of the function of route get, so you see how it's return view, what we're going to do is the very end, right before the last semicolon, we're just going to say name, parentheses, home, and then I'm going to copy this. Oops, put it in the wrong place. So has to go right at the very end. And then we're going to have slash about, and we have a contact. Oops, I put it in the wrong. Put it inside the parentheses. I don't want it. I want it at the end of the parentheses. There we go. So I got slash home about contact. I go to my template for main nav, and I should have route home, route about, route contact. So you got your routes in web.php. It says route. That's how it works. So when I have this, I refresh the page. Oops. Route about not defined. So why did I forgot about. So if you get route not defined, it means that the name of the route is wrong. And let's just refresh this. One of the nice things is also, whenever you have named routes, it checks everything on the page when it's loading to make sure it actually is going to load. So it reduces the chances that you can have weird errors or broken links inside your application because it checks all the links internally whenever you use named routes. So we got about, contact, and a route undefined usually means that the name of the route is wrong. About, contact, there we go. Now the next thing is, what we're going to do here is we have to do two things. What we're going to do is first, we're going to stop in your programs. The way programs are supposed to be designed is that you don't repeat yourself. And right now, and also that functions do one and only one thing. So in here, we have our routes, and these routes are going to need to do more than return page views. They're going to need to, and what we're going to have a little mini or a little demonstration of, and this is what your homework is going to be, is that I want to make a contact page that says, that takes the person's name that's in the field and says thank you to that person by name. So I'm going to take, when I submit the contact form, I want it to say thank you, Keith. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to first get rid of these, change the format of our routes so that we're going to use a controller. And in here, what I want to do is I have to generate a controller. And so I am going to actually just, let me just rename this because I'm going to generate the same exact one. And I just want to put a BAK extension to save this because we don't need this code. There's a little command here. We go down to the terminal, and you can look this up. So if you can't see this, just look it up. It's PHP artisan make controller space the name of the controller. The controller is what manages your program's business logic. It's what controls what happens when someone goes to that route. Do you save a database record? Do you update a database record? Do you display something on the page? Do you redirect them to some other location, which we're going to learn about redirects in a minute? Basically, the controller is what makes everything work. So your routes, they're the URLs. There's the endpoints that whenever a request comes in and they do anything. And your route figures out what controller method to call when a request comes in. So I'm gonna generate a controller file. And when I generate a controller file, it's gonna be an app, your app folder, go down to HTTP, and then inside of HTTP, you're gonna have a folder called controllers, and you'll end up getting this thing called a page controller. And now I already made a page controller, so I'm gonna take the code that I have here, and I'm just gonna, we're gonna take home, about, contact, and store, and thanks. These are the ones we're gonna use. So I'm just gonna take this and put it in my page controller and just save us some time. We'll go through all this. So in here, it looks a lot like what we were doing before. You see return view, pages home, pages about, pages contact. There's a little, we'll get into this store and thank you in a minute. But we just want to go and now have our routes call these controller functions, these controller methods, whenever a request comes in. So how do we do that? We're going to come over to web, and we're going to wipe out, we'll do the first one. Let's wipe out everything that's in the function right now because we don't need that. We want to keep the name on the route. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to say home, or pages controller at home. And so this is the name of the files, pages controller. That's the first part. And then it's at, and so you just have route get slash comma pages controller at home arrow name. So this says the name of the route is home. When someone goes to the slash, we're going to go to the pages controller and call the home method. And so I'm going to go back here and click on my home, and we got our home page. And so what we're going to do is we need to get this up. I'm going to take pages controller, take this code right here, and we're going to get it to work for each one of these. So I'm just replacing that entire function because now that entire function is inside our controller, and we have to change at, about, and then we're going to do the contact, and contact. And so now let's get all these pages to work. Home, about, contact. Awesome. And inside our main nav, we have our routes. See the named route here. So now that these are named, we don't have to come back and change these, because they get really URLs get really complicated to write, because and you'll see that in a minute, because we're going to have to start passing parameters, passing things in through the URL that are going to change. Now let's come into here. So we got our contact form here, and let's just jump back over to the contact form. Contact form. And let's just let me see something here. So in our contact form, the way the form works is, and I'm going to take this CSRF thing out here in a minute. You see, a form has to have attributes. And so this is just a Bootstrap form. So I just went over and looked up to get on Bootsnip. I got a contact form here, and I have to modify this contact form. So what I got to do on all forms, it's basically like a little rinse and repeat. You just do the same thing all the time. You got to have a method called post, and then an action, and the method, the post method, is the request method. That's in our web right here. Right now we're doing get requests, but we're going to have to do a post request. So what we're going to do is, right now let's look at what happens on our form whenever we try to use it as it is. So I'm going to I got my contact form, and I'm going to wipe all this out, because I'm going to make it just like it was when I copied it off the Bootstrap or Bootsnip. And I'm going to come back here, and so if we have this contact form, it just doesn't work. So it's just going to say, not real happy. Oh, let me refresh this. This is actually what, because I forgot to refresh it, didn't load it. So when I submit it, nothing happens when I have a form that doesn't have an action or a method. Now let me put an action and a method on it, and let's see what happens. So we're going to just method post, and in our action we can use our named route. So let's put an action and a route to, and we have to come up with a new route. We have to add the new route, but let's add a new route, and let's call it store. Actually, let's just do this. Contact submit. We'll just contact store. And what I like to do is just put a period in here, and I sort of separate the names like this, contact.store. And you get so many files and everything, you got to have like some sort of naming convention. And usually I would do, a lot of times I like to just do contact period store, similar to what the page templates are. So I got contacts.store, and I come over here, and I don't have a contact.store route. So I'm going to need to make one. And I'm going to actually put a name on it, .store. And we're going to say this is going to be the store method. And so if I'm going to come back to the form, and what's going to happen here? So we're going to come back here, and we're going to have a so that's from let's just put that route in. So we're gonna actually end up having a, let's get that out of there. So here it says route not defined. I'm gonna get that route out of my pages controller. Let me just do this real quick. Pages. Store, and it kind of like checks everything, and that's where it's because I haven't defined a store route. That's kind of one of the tricks with the named routes. It's really kind of good, is that it checks everything on the site, all the links and the way the links work, that they're all gonna function. There's not missing anything. And so what happens is here, let's just go to contact. Let me see, I changed something here. Route name, contact, and the way I figure this out is route contact not defined. PHP includes main nav dot blade, and so this is telling me inside my main nav blade file I have a route called contact that's not defined. And let me just see something. So I got a route called contact. Oh, this is why, because this is going to be a post request. My bad. So I'm going to submit to contact. That's what we're going to end up doing. Sorry, my bad. We'll talk about that in a minute. All right, so here's about contact. I can type something in here. And I'm going to send it. And it's going to say page has expired due to inactivity. All right, so important little bit of knowledge here. In Laravel 5.5, so they recently just went up, they just recently changed the version for Laravel. So they went from 5.5 to 5.6, and you're going to find two sets of documentations. And like if you install a project now, you're going to get Laravel 5.6, but whenever you started the class, you ended up having 5.5. So one of the changes that happened is that we have to add what's called a CSRF token, and we're going to do this, and this is going to be the way that, see, if you have 5.5, you can do it the way we're showing, but if you look online and you come across the 5.6 documentation, it says @CRF, and that's the way they want you to do in 5.6. But I think the old way will still work in 5.6. It's just they added a new way to do it. So you might get, but if you have 5.5 and you try to do this @CRF, it's not going to work. It's just going to print @CRF on your page. So what I have to do here, and while I'm doing this, I'll tell you what CSRF is. Basically, CSRF protection is that when you submit forms, you have people can change them. So basically the idea is, imagine your Twitter and you have a person like let's see, somebody famous. So you have Barack Obama. So Barack Obama, was the president of the United States, and he has a Twitter account. And if you don't have CSRF protection on your site, it's possible for someone to make changes and sort of impersonate Barack Obama by changing the way forms are submitted, because they can add fields in the browser and they can change things in the browser that can trick the program that's being submitted to into thinking that you're someone else or that you're trying to add data or to break into the system. So a huge security problem in websites is that they have to have this thing called CSRF protection, which is cross-site request forgeries. You can find more out about CSRF here on Google, or another place here is this OWASP, which is the basically a organization dedicated to computer security. So we got page controllers, about, contact, and store. And what I got to do is I got to come over to my form, and I got to just put this CSRF token here, and I save it. Now let's look at what it did to the form. Uh-oh. What is... my bad. CSRF field. My bad. The CSRF field, that's what it has to be. And then, yep, that gets rid of that. And then let's go look at the page. And then what it does is it adds a hidden field to the form with a value that sort of secures this form to make sure that each form that's generated on the site, it verifies that it's like a checksum that verifies that data in that form is not been tampered with when it comes back. So it's like, it says, hey, what data is in this form whenever I send it to you, and it generates the value and it sends it to you. And then when the form comes back and it's like, did anything change in this form that it shouldn't? And then it checks that value and says, oh yeah, you didn't change anything in the form, I'll accept this form. So this protects the site. And so what we could do now is, oops, I'm going to come back over here and we're going to submit our form. So let's do Keith at bizly.com and test, and we're going to send this message, and nothing happens, which is good. It didn't say page expired. This is actually the page that we'd want to see, because we have to add this. If we go back over to here, you see in the form it said that we have to have a post request, and it's got to have contact store. Now, one of the things is, you see we use the named route, and we use the name route inside the form. Let's just take a look at the form real quick again, just to show you how that worked out. You see, it took the named route and it computed the correct URL for our named route. All right, so now what we want to do is, I want to get the data out of this form. So how do we do that? So let's just put some information in here. Let's do Keith at web.com. And we're going to send this message. And right now it's not on this page. We can keep refreshing this and keep reusing that form, actually. So I'm going to go back to my pages controller, and you see in web.php what happens is that pages controller at store calls page function store right here. So in your web.php, here is the name of the controller that we generated, so pages controller, that's up here, and then at the name of the function in pages controller that you call. So home, about, contact. I might have skipped this. So home, about, contact. And you see we just have return view, just like we did before, but now they're inside functions, because each function in a controller should do one thing. This is return the view, pass data. It should do one thing. and we have about and contact and store. So here's the store method. So in the post request, we're having a store. And what I want to do is I want to take the function store request. So I'm passing let's explain this little terminology here. So this is what's called a type hint in PHP. A type hint is inside of a function. If you have just a word like request, or you could have string or array, in this case it's a request, and the request class, and a class is like a blueprint, it's like a structure in code, is named here. And so this is telling Laravel, or telling this function, hey, only take in we want to get the request class and stick it into here. So I want to make sure that the request right here is an object. So, and then what I want to do is, the way I get the values out of the form is I just have a little syntax here, which is $name, which is a variable, and that stores the name, and I have $request arrow name, and that takes the name in the request and stores it here. And in PHP, there's a little code which is echo, or actually there's echo, and we could print $name just to see that it's in there. And it's an ask for form resubmission. It's going to resubmit the data, and that's the name that I typed in. Now there's another function that we end up using, which is called die-dump, which is DD, and you end up using DD all the time. So die-dump means quit whatever you're doing and print out everything inside of the object. So I want to print out request just to show what that looks. So DD $request, and we're gonna go here, and I'm gonna refresh this. And so this is what's inside the request object that's being sent to Laravel every time a request comes in. So here, and we're going to talk a little bit about this. See, it says the request method. It says the parameters. And see, here's our token. That's from CSRF. The name, which is in the form, and email and message. See, these are the form fields. And the form fields, if you remember, I think we talked about this. We go to contact.blade. The names of the values are going to be the name property or name attribute inside the form. See, name, email, message. That's inside. When you do a DD on a request, you see that it's request, and then it's parameters bag, and then here is the data that's inside of this. So request contains different information, the information that's inside of a post request. It also, if this was a GET request, we'd see URL parameters here, which we're going to get into URL parameters in a second, because what's going to happen is that we're going to take the values out of our form, and then we're going to send the user to a page which is going to say thank you for submitting the contact message. So let's do that. So I'm going to go back over to my pages controller, and what's going to happen is that we have the name here, and we're going to get rid of this die-dump. And what we're going to want to do, is I'm going to have this, and we're going to talk about this redirect idea. So what I want to do is I want to read when the user submits the request. So let's just trace through this. So go to web, and let's go to the form. So we'll start from the beginning. So here's the form, method post. So we're going to have a post request to a route called contact store. Go to web. Here we got request method is right here, post, contact store. That's where the form is going to be submitted. Once the contact store is submitted, it's going to go and say page controller at store, page controller file at store, store. We're going to get the name out. We're going to redirect the person to a new route. So we're going to have to make a new named route called thanks. And we're going to pass that named route a parameter called name. That's what's going to be here. So let's make this. And so the parameter that we're going to pass is through the URL. So I'm going to copy a GET request here, and I'm going to make it say thanks /name, and we're going to take a look at this. And this is the query parameter that we're going to have, and we're going to have pages controller, and we're going to make a new method called thanks, and we're going to call this route thanks. So let's go back to the page controller. So here we have a route called thanks. You see it said route called thanks, and then the name is right here. So name right here. But before what we're going to do is I'm going to just show you. We're going to add this request parameter down to our thanks function, and because I had already done this, and we'll talk about this. So here I have a function called thanks. The name here, see name, boop, 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 boop. When the redirect happens, it's going to send the user to the thanks control, to the pages controller, and call the thanks method, and it's going to pass the name from here into here, and we have our request here. We don't actually need this, but I just want to show it to you whenever I do a die dump. So I'm going to do a die dump on $request. And so we're going to go back and let's do the whole thing. So we're going to go name Keith at web.com, and I'm going to do test as the message, and I'm going to send it. And what happens is you see the URL is no longer, it happens so fast you don't even see it. It goes right past the post request, takes the post request, and sends it to thanks/Keith. And if we look at the parameters bag, let's see here, where is here? We got request. Where is the? See, there's the URI. And yeah, we're not going to have parameters because we've got to do that a different way. So here's the die dump of that request, but we don't really need that. But a lot of times I just check it. And then what we're going to do is I want to take the name attribute or name value that's being passed in here. And just so you know, it's in order. So like, for example, if we had thanks name and then I had another thing which was like last, then this would be the second. So this would be the first parameter that was passed, and this would be the second parameter that's passed. But we're just going to save this, and so I have name, and then what I want to do is I'm going to dd $name, just check to see what happens here. and then we're gonna, and see it says Keith, so it prints that out. You can either use Echo or DD. All right, so the last step here is really what we want to do is want to take the name value. So I'm going to take the DD out of here. And I want to send that name into our template, our thank you template. So here's return view pages.thankyou with name. So how do we do that? So we got, it returns the view, and then every time you want to send a value into your view, you just put it in within, you put a width and compact, and then you can keep on, like if we had more values, we could do last, first. So anything we want to send into our view, we put into this function called compact. But we don't need anything else, so we just need name. And then in the thank you view, so I'm going to go over here and go back to my blade templates, and I got a thank you blade template. And the way you print out values is you just put them in curly braces. So it's thank you curly brace name. So let's test this, and then we're going to walk through the whole thing again and just do it again so we can see how the whole flow goes. So I go here, I got my name, Keith at webizzly.com, and send the message, and then thank you Keith. See Keith right here, but that's in the URL, and I'd say Bob, Steve, all right. So basically you have to think about this. GET requests generally get their parameters, the data that they have to work with, passed in through the URL. The post requests get it through the request in the post inside the request. All right, so when you're dealing with post, you're getting your data out of request. When you're dealing with URL parameters, or when GET requests, you're getting them out of the URL, and those become parameters. So let's walk through this whole thing again. So we're going to go to the home page. So we go on the home page. When we go to the home page, we can go to web.php and see what happens here. Slash pages controller at home, name of the route, home. Let's just look at the main nav. You see route home. There you go. Let's make our, and then we have the route home. I click on that, that's how that comes up. Same thing with contact. And so let's go back over to the app and let's click on contact. So I click on contact, that loads the route, or loads the route, calls the controller method for loading the contact form. So I say hello, or I'd say my name is Keith, and Keith at me.m.com, and then we have some message, and I click on send message, and it says thank you Keith. And after I have thank you Keith, the way that works is when I press the submit button, let's look at the contact form. We had to have a method called post, because that tells the router that it's a post method. Action, remember we have named routes, so our named route is called contact store. And if we go over to web.php, we have route post, that's the method. Contact store is the name of the route, and it's slash contacts, but because we're using named routes, we don't really have to worry so much about the URL here, except whenever we want to pass in parameters. So whenever I submit, it calls the store method, In the pages controller, there's the store. I get the request comes in. I get the value out of request. Then I do a return, redirect, arrow route. And by the way, if inside of your, and I can show you this in a second, but inside your page templates, if you want to pass parameters into them, in the page template, you can also use the same syntax. So I'm actually going to copy this, and so here I want to redirect to a route, and I want to pass into the URL the name parameter here, boop, boop, name, and then that is going to go to the thank you page, and I'm able to print out name. Now, just to show you a little trick here, if I go back to main nav and let me just save my paste here, but let me grab this, and I just want to show you a little trick. It wouldn't really do this, but it just illustrates kind of what we're doing, and you might use this for some things. So if I have a route here and I'm going to replace this, but let's say I just want to have it click on this. I want to click on thanks, so I'm going to put a new menu item in there, and I'm going to arbitrarily just say, rather than have a name, I'm just going to say thank you IS601. Let's go load the page, and we're going to get a new menu item, and see when I click on this, it's going to have the IS601. Now I'm going to submit this video, and then I'm going to give you the link to this repository with this video. And what I want you to practice is, I want you to try to recreate this program on your own, so that on your project you're working on, that whenever someone submits a contact form, that you're able to say thank you to them. Okay? So we'll pick this up with next time, and where we're headed with this is that we're gonna take this and we're gonna store the contact messages into the database. That's going to be our next, and we're going to be able to retrieve those from the database. This is really the next place that we're gonna go. So thank you, and I'll talk to you next week.